question.
What is your reaction to people like me? I mean, we come to your apartment, we want to sit down and talk to you. You know why we're here. We want to hear this story, and you've had a bunch here.
Yeah.
Are you surprised at that?
A little bit, yes. I was. But a lot of it, I know, has been to do with my stance on religion. I mean, a very large number of people have asked me, doesn't it change your attitude to the infinite, the eternal, the supernatural, and so forth? And I've said that I really don't see why it should. I've never thought of it as a particularly searching question. I mean, I spent a lot of my life deciding that there isn't any redemption, that there's no salvation, that there's no afterlife, that there's no supervising boss. If I was to tell you, well, now I've got a malignancy in my esophagus, that changes everything, you would think, I hope, that the main effect had been on my IQ. It's a complete logical non sequitur. It's nothing to do with it. So I've enjoyed taking part in that argument. And there's a certain ghoulish element even about the nice people who've been praying for me, because they are not just praying for my recovery, they're praying for my reconciliation with religion. And I proposed a trade-off the other day. I said, I'll tell you what if we secularists stop going to hospitals and walking around the wards and asking if people are religious when they're in extremis in their last days, and saying, look, you've still got a little time, why don't you live the last few days of it as a free person? You'll feel much better. All that nonsense they taught you, you could still have every chance to give it up. Experience the life of a free-thinking, autonomous person. Don't live in fear. Don't believe in mythology. I don't think they'd welcome it. And of course, we don't do that. But it seems to be considered the right of almost everybody to do it the other way around. I don't resent it at all, because I like every opportunity for the argument. But a lot of it has been to do with that. I don't flatter myself that as a public figure I rate all that highly.
The book note show we did in '93, it's a short clip. I want to run this and get your reaction to it.
For a lot of people, their first love is what they'll always remember. For me, it's always been the first hate. And I think that hatred, though it provides often rather junky energy, is a terrific way of getting you out of bed in the morning, keeping you going. It can be, if you don't let it get out of hand, it can be canalized into writing. And in this country where people like to be non-judgmental when they can be, which translates as, on the whole, lenient, there are an awful lot of bubble reputations floating around that, one wouldn't be doing one's job if one didn't itch to prick.
So, is it still a good idea to hate people?
Well, since it's not really avoidable, I think the question is how to, if you like, turn it to advantage. One of the things I don't like about Christianity is the idea of compulsory love, because I think it's bound to lead to hypocrisy, people pretending to love more than they do. And also, since it's coupled with the injunction to love a God who you're also supposed to fear, there's every chance of that sort of curdling. There's something fairly honest, by contrast, to finding someone completely unbearable. I mean, someone like Henry Kissinger, for example. It's bad to let it, it's a bit like alcohol, if you like. It's a good servant, but it's a bad master. I mean, I have a completely cold hatred and contempt for Henry Kissinger, but it doesn't waste much of my time. It's just that it enables me to penetrate, I think, the sort of fog of sentiment and bogus reputation in which he's shrouded and protected. And it doesn't eat away at me, it doesn't keep me awake at night, it doesn't poison me, it doesn't fill me with bile. But I can't pretend that it's just a matter of a political disagreement. I mean, I think there is such a thing as evil in the world. It's sometimes personified. And I think one's under no obligation to be ambivalent there.
Oh, change your mind at all about Mother Theresa?
What would change my mind about her? One couldn't exactly hate her. Because in a way she was a pathetic figure. But I detested the influence that she had. I can tell you why in a sentence if you want. Well, the very reason that she so celebrated, this apparent concern for the poor of the world, or the poorest of the poorest, she was always obliging us to say. Well, as it happens, we know what the cure for poverty is, or what a certain cure for poverty is, and it goes under the name the empowerment of women. It works everywhere, Bangladesh, Bolivia, name it. Give women some control over their reproductive cycle, get them off the animal routine of breeding machine, and the level of poverty will decline sharply. It's never known to fail. It's a consistent finding. Just for an example, this is my central point about it, Mother Teresa spent her entire life opposing the only thing that works. Opposing all forms of birth control, comparing them to abortion, which she called murder. I mean, directly in her Nobel Prize speech, said that was the main threat to peace in the world, which is a fanatical, stupid thing to say. That's basically it. That plus the reputation for sanctity that she got for preaching this nonsense. But one could add her friendship with the worst, the richest of the rich, people like Charles Keating of the Savings and Loan, who was a great friend of hers. She took stolen money from him, refused when the court asked to return it, took money from the Duvalier dictatorship in Haiti, which treated the poor like pigs, worse. Blessed them in return, gave them divine sanction. Goes on. Her whole effect was entirely retrograde, and no one ever wrote any but one story about her till I wrote my critique. And in that book, which is very short, I make 5 or 6 other direct accusations against her, backed up with fact, and that book's been reviewed by every newspaper in the world, including all the religious press. No one's ever pointed out a mistake in it. Not one. And if half of what I say is true about her, then none of what is commonly believed about her is true. But I'm used to this now. People need, every now and then, a complete illusion, and this was one.
What would you do if Henry Kissinger decided to call you and try to bury the hatchet after all these years?
That'd be extremely interesting. But one of the reasons I detest him is I sort of know that couldn't happen. He wouldn't even agree, when I was writing my book about him, to have questions submitted in writing, let alone to meet me. He's made it a condition when he appears on television programs that he not be asked about the book. I know this from the producers, several of them. He made it a condition of his appearance at the National Press Club, which I don't think should have agreed, that he not be asked about the book. Never mind his attitude to me. There's no reason to like me, but I mean, I would have pretended, if I was him, I'd have pretended, who's this guy Hitchens? I don't care. But I know I needled him. But more important, if you think of the things he's been found out as having done, lying about Vietnam, lying about Chile, Bangladesh, East Timor, the deaths of so many people needlessly for the vanity of himself and his criminal president. We have other people from that period in our history, Robert McNamara, the Bundy brothers, others, William Colby, who, in their books and their memoirs, tried to make some kind of restitution. They said, actually, this was pretty bad policy. We sort of suspected at the time that it was bad, maybe worse, and we're sort of sorry. And actually, we have some evidence we feel we should share with you, some disclosures that you should have had at the time. Made some attempt. Kissinger's never said a word of self-criticism, not one. And he gets very petulant and angry and spoiled and ugly when he's criticized. So, as Jeeves says in another context to Bertie, the contingency, sir, is a remote one. But if he was to try it, I'd be fascinated to meet him, of course.
We don't have much time.
Look, don't say that.
I know.
I'll be the judge of that.
If you knew that there was a certain amount of time left, I have no idea, 6 months, a year, whatever, are things you want to do? I mean, have you gone through that process?
Yes, but what they don't tell you, you see, is what kind of months these would be. That's the other reason they don't like being asked.
What have you not done?
I mean, if I was in, you probably remember Stephen Solas, the late congressman, very interesting man, had the same thing as me, died recently, but before he died, he'd had about 4 or 5 cancer-free years, and he'd done a lot of traveling. He'd kept up his interest in human rights and international policy. And then he got word that it was back, and probably that was it, and he made fairly short work of dying. This was a few weeks ago. That's what I need to know. I mean, the great loss to me in the last few months is the inability to travel. I got to Toronto for Thanksgiving. That wasn't that hard. I've been to California. I've been with a private plane, very kindly, that was sent for me to do a speaking engagement in Montana. I finally got to see the Little Bighorn, which I've always wanted to. And the wonderful national park. So I've now only got 3 American states unvisited.
Which ones?
The Dakotas and Nebraska.
Hey,
I've done all the others plus Puerto Rico.
any plan to go back to your home country? You're an American citizen.
Yes, I worried. It's sentimental, I know, but someone said to me randomly the other day, "Are you afraid of not seeing England again?" And I realized, yes, I was. I can't bear the idea of not going back. At least once. But I couldn't do it now. I'd have to be told I was on what they call a chemo holiday.
We are out of time, and I think the best way to end it is to say I'll see you in a couple of years and
Absolutely.
do this again.
You bet.
Thank you very much.
No, my pleasure. It is Brian, isn't it?
For a DVD copy of this program, call 1-877-662-7726. For free transcripts or to give us your comments about this program, visit us at qna.org. Q&A programs are also available as C-SPAN podcasts.